Hey YouTube, today I'm going to teach you how to milk a goat. First things first, I need to get my stuff ready to go outside to the milking stall. First, I fill this bucket about halfway full with hot water and add a good squirt of this dish soap. This we will use to wash teats. Next, I come through to my pantry area and get a half-gallon mason jar off of my kitchen catch-all. Then I head out to the milking stall. Alright, Clover, let's get in. Come on, get out. I'm going to give her a quart of this grain mixture. As well as about a quart of these alfalfa pellets. And just a handful or so of these, it's too much, of these sunflower seeds. She will clear that bowl while we do our milking thing. There are a lot of variables when it comes to picking a dairy goat. Today you're going to see me milk La Manchas, which is a breed that are kept specifically for dairy. They have very sweet milk, and they're most known by their lack of external ears. The other goats that you see in my videos are Nubians, the ones with the long floppy ears. They're also a dairy breed. There are several other breeds though, Alpines and Saanins, which are both known for being really high production. They're Nigerian dwarfs, which are the really small goats that are also a really good dairy breed. They have very high butter fat, they just don't produce as much milk. They all have their perks, they all have their drawbacks, so it's kind of really something you want to research extensively to find out exactly what it is you want. There are some breeds that aren't kept for milk. Obviously they still produce milk, that's just not what they're known for. So today you're going to see La Manchas. They're the only two I have, and I really am enjoying them. They're the newest girls to my herd. As you can tell by how Clover came in and hopped up on the stand, she is a very trained goat. She's used to being milked. She's used to getting up on the milk stand. It's not always like this in the beginning. I did a video last year about milk stand training first fresheners, and it's definitely a process. It's something that takes work. Right now I'm working with a few of my girls that are about to kid for the first time by just bringing them in here every day, putting them on the stand, giving them a small amount of feed or alfalfa, just something that's a treat for them, and just feeling them down, touching their udder and getting them used to being handled. This is a huge step in milking a goat. If you bought your goat from somebody already in milk, it's really important to ask, how does this goat do in milking? You might even ask to see the goat being milked before you purchase it. But if you ended up with a goat that is difficult to milk, all is not lost. They can be trained. It just takes some patience and diligence. Washing the goat's teats off is a really important part of milking, because you don't want all of the dirt, the hair, and otherwise the germs that are on their teats to end up in your milk. So like I said, this is just hot soapy water, and I come out beforehand and just wash their teats, get their udder good and clean so that our milk is clean. I used to use baby wipes, which works. However, I found it didn't get them quite as clean as just using a rag and some soapy water. And also I didn't really like the waste, because at the time I was milking 8 goats, and you can imagine that using a couple baby wipes per goat, we were going through them really fast. I like this better because it's, I feel a little more hygienic and also much less wasteful. I also like milking into mason jars. That's a trick that I learned from my friend over at Guildbrook Farms. I'll link their account down below. They actually, I don't think they have goats right now, but they used to, and she milked into a mason jar, and I thought that is so completely genius. One, because you know, anybody who has a homestead probably has tons of mason jars, so it's not like I have to look for this. It's not like I have to have something for a special purpose. I like to have things that are multi-purposeful. Also, there's no seams. It's all glass, and so there's no seams. If you buy, you know, milking pails from a goat supply, you're gonna pay something like $40 or $50 for a metal pail because it's seamless. If you buy a pail like what I'm using here for my water from Tractor Supply for, you know, $5 or $6, you see it's got all of these rivets, it's got these seams in the metal, and these things can harbor bacteria, so you don't want to use those for milking. However, a wide mouth mason jar is easy to hold. This is a quart. I'll use this. I'll also use half a gallon. And you could, if you're trying to keep your goat's milk separate, you can easily just milk into one, put a lid on it. Totally, this is, for me, this is the way to go. One other thing, whenever you're training, you know, a doe kind of early on before she really knows the ropes the way Clover here does, you can use a smaller jar, and it's easier to get out because the goat putting her foot in the pail is one of the biggest issues whenever it comes to a goat that's not super well trained. Whereas when you're holding a jar, it's a lot easier for you to get it in and out of the way. A good practice whenever you have a dairy animal is to use something like a lid or a small cup to take a look at the milk before you start milking into your jar or your pail. So you'll come out and just you'll just squeeze a couple of squirts from each side into your cup, your test area, and you'll take a look at it and just make sure everything looks normal, that you don't have any sort of like weird chunks or blood or anything that would denote infection. That way you get a good look. It also releases that plug of milk that might be dried in there, and make sure that the stream that you're taking in for your consumption is completely clean. A goat's teats, you know, really vary goat by goat as far as size, length of the teat, the orifice here, the opening where the milk comes out. Some of them have much larger holes essentially, and so the milk comes out really fast. Both of my goats have a little bit larger teats, both of these goats, because they're both a little bit blown, which I won't get into what that means, but they are very easy to milk. I have pretty small hands, but I do okay with them. So what you're going to do here is, they've got this with their udder or their bag. It's full. She's really full right now. And what you're dealing with is essentially, you might massage this udder a little bit. And what you're going to do is, you want the milk to fill this teat. You want to take the top of your hand and pinch it off, so that basically when you squeeze this, you can feel the milk flowing through this teat. And if you were to squeeze it without pinching it off, the milk would just flow back up into the udder. So what you're doing is, you're pinching off the top, and then you're going to squeeze the milk out, just like this. You want to go a little bit rhythmically. So what I'm doing here on the top of my hand is, every time I squeeze, I then open it back up, allow the teat to fill back up, pinch it off again, and then squeeze again to empty the teat of milk. So you're going to continue on with that rhythmic milking until you feel that there's no more milk. It's very obvious. You don't have to have a big question as to whether or not the doe is empty, because the milk simply starts coming. However, if you have a doe, especially one that still has a kid on her that she's still feeding, and you can clearly see that her udder is still full, but there's no milk coming out, she might just not be letting her milk down. One thing that you can do, if you've ever seen a goat kid who is ready to nurse, what they do is they approach their mom and they headbutt her udder. It's actually awful, like, if you watch it. But what you can kind of do is just pat on her udder, kind of just gently tap on it a little bit. You can massage up higher up here and get her to let the milk down. Now, Clover's a really bad example to show this on because she always lets all of her milk down very easily. She doesn't give me a hard time at all. But if you do see fullness still up here in this region, go ahead and pat on it, and a lot of times what you'll see is they'll go ahead and let more milk down, and you can begin milking again and milk will start coming out. Otherwise, what you'll have at the end of a milking, which I'm getting there with Clover right now, is you'll have teats that are loose, really soft. You notice there's just nothing full here, and she is empty. Getting a little bit of hair or debris in your milk is unfortunately just part of the game. That's why we're going to be straining this when we get back in the house to make sure that it is clean for human consumption. Now I'm going to put a lid on this jar, which she has filled up about halfway. She gave me about a quart of milk this morning. That's fairly average for this breed. There are definitely La Manchas who are better dairy goats that you get, you know, a gallon out of every day. But these goats came to me after not being milked super regularly, so we're really happy with what we get from them. I'm gonna let her finish her food, and then we'll bring Anna in here for her turn. You done, little Chloe? Are you done? Hey, pretty girl, are you ready for your breakfast? My trusty dog just waiting here for me to be done. Hey, Bear. Hey, handsome man. Let's try. Anna does not have quite the laid-back personality of Clover. She's very sweet, but she's much more timid. She allows me to milk her with no problems. She's very used to Daniel, so he milks her with no problems. However, she's not one that I usually let the kids help with because they really scare her, and she ends up pressed up against this wall. You can tell it kind of stresses her out. As you can see, Anna's teats are much larger, and she actually produces quite a bit more than Clover. She's very easy to milk. Again, I'm pinching off the top and just squeezing the milk out of her teat. So when you see me kind of let go and then squeeze again, I'm releasing that top to allow the teat to fill back up. If you have a goat with a really large teat, sometimes you have to start a little lower down. One of the last things I do is I take my bucket of soapy water and I just wash it over the stand to wash off any dribbles of spilled milk or food, so that we don't end up with a bad fly problem out here in the barn. Now we're going to go into the house and process this milk. Because of the fact that we go through so many of these jars, there's almost always one clean in the dishwasher, and that's the one I always grab to put my milk in because I know it's sterilized. I've got a strainer here that I got actually from my cousin. She got it at a goat supply, I think Hoger Goat Supply, but there's also Caprine Supply. You know, there are several websites where you can buy a milk strainer, and they're all different. This one has two parts here and then the main funnel. And you use these filters, put them on, use a new one every time you strain. Keep them in this jar. and they've lasted forever. I think it was a 500 pack, and we use one or two a day. So you can imagine we've been using that for a while. And you just put it together here, fit it to the top of your jar, and I'm going to go ahead and pour the milk through. Whenever you're milking a goat, it foams a lot, and so I ended up using 2 different jars because this one was full with the foam. Now it's died down some, so that's why. This filtering process catches any stray hairs or bits of debris that might have fallen in the milk while you were milking. And we take a clean lid, put it on top. Now I'm going to put this into the freezer and set an alarm on my phone for 1 hour. You want to get your milk as cold as possible, as quickly as possible, because it really helps with the flavor. You do want to set an alarm though, because these break if left in the freezer to actually freeze. Ask me how I know. Alright YouTube, that's it on how to milk a dairy goat. Hopefully that gives you guys some direction, a little bit of insight in how we do things. If you have any other questions or comments, I'd love to see them in the comment section below. And we will see you guys next time.